Good day everyone and welcome back to the 2021 Nest Box series. If you happen to be only joining us, we're following a Bluetit family, Mindy and Mork, raising 6 chicks, with the latest only hatching yesterday. So we have a very new and young family. You can see the smaller beaks compared to the bigger beaks. And this is due to the age difference. There is 2 days of difference, which is quite unusual. Usually they all hatch within the first day. So we're going to have to see how those little chicks fare out against those bigger chicks. And while they are siblings, I'm afraid it's a one-for-all situation, as they are only concerned in getting food for themselves and surviving. And when there's not enough food being brought into these nests, it's usually the youngest siblings that will go first, as they're not able to tussle for as much food as the other chicks. Just listen to these contact calls of Mindy for an incoming Mork. A lovely big green caterpillar for the chicks there. And I want to thank everyone who voted on my last post. It seems to be that most people want to see at least 2 days in each video. And so that's just what we're going to do today. We're going to be covering the 26th and the 27th. And it's just amazing in the upcoming videos, as I was pulling a lot of footage there the other day, just how quickly these chicks grow. So the first thing you need to look out is look from that colour from a red chick to a kind of black chick. And you can see at the moment that they're still very bald and red. So we'll see if there's any difference by the end of the 27th in their appearance. And on the morning of the 26th, all 6 chicks seem to be still alive and well. There has been plenty of big green caterpillars being brought in, and Mindy is keeping a good job of keeping the nest nice and clean. You can see her here, she goes down and she tends to shuffle the chicks, and I always think they're doing this to try to find some waste or maybe some fecal sacs that weren't removed. Mork seems to be a very efficient hunter. He's constantly in and finds loads of different invertebrates, caterpillars and grubs for the chicks. And a lovely family shot of all of them there. I really do love when both parents are in the nest together, but they never hang around too long, these two. They're always getting food or either keeping the chicks warm. But I do find it very cute how Mork sometimes just seems to want to take a wee peek at the chicks if he's not feeding them himself. And you know what, all these different types of food being brought in and big caterpillars being brought in, they produce big fecal sacs, and we have the biggest one of the year right now. Just come on, that's impressive by anyone's standards. But fecal sac size appreciation put aside, the day really continued just like the previous days. Plenty of food being brought in and the chicks seemingly doing really well. And don't be alarmed, sometimes the chicks are under that little shelf at the bottom of the nest cup. There's actually, the nest continues in under the nest, and sometimes you can only see 2 or 3 chicks. But thankfully they always eventually show themselves. We can see Mindy here doing some more nest maintenance. Sometimes she comes up with some fecal sac or a bit of waste, or other times she just looks like she's shuffling the chicks about. And at this point in time, the chicks' eyes are still closed. They really are just small, bald little babies. And over the coming days, they start to learn that even the sound of a bird hopping in through the nest hole is reason enough to gape. And that instinct just grows and grows, and I can tell you later on in the days, they explode out of that nest cup trying to look for food. It's quite funny, you start to feel quite sorry for the parents. And that brings us to the end of the 26th. All chicks seem to have been fed quite well, and food was brought in right up until around 8 o'clock. Mindy is still sleeping in the nest overnight to keep the chicks warm. That will eventually end when the chicks get old enough. This is her leaving the nest in the morning. And some of those bigger chicks are already starting to look a little darker. Just look at their little heads. I always find they tend to grow overnight quite a bit. A sure sign that enough food was brought in the day before. And Mork there getting yet another lovely fecal sack. And you can just imagine what this nest would turn out like if they didn't remove the fecal sacks. Being cavity nesting birds, the place would surely quickly fill up. That would lead to smell and also potential disease. And the smell would certainly attract predators. And well, disease obviously wouldn't be too good either. You can see that in the next sequence, sometimes the chicks don't react to the parents coming in. And that just goes to show that they're still quite young. It's only until they do their chirping or contact call to let them know that there's food that they all bust and start to gape. And this again is just down to them being very young and still completely blind. But with the volume of food being brought in, it really won't be too long before those little eyes start to open. And you can still see the smaller beaks compared to the bigger ones sometimes, so the little chicks are still in there doing well, and they seem to get fed after everyone else. And there's so much food being brought in that eventually the bigger chicks get full and don't gape as readily as the small ones, and that's when they get their food. And if you look carefully on the top of the nest there, you can still see that there's an egg. That was our 7th egg, and I'm afraid, as I said in the last video, it actually never hatches, or at least I don't think it does. Just look at that little chick struggling to get a big green caterpillar down. It's one of the smaller chicks, so let's hope it gets that valuable meal down to its belly. That will certainly keep it going for another few hours. They seem to find a lot of green caterpillars today. They must have found a tree with a lot of them on it, as a lot of them get brought in. And these are the perfect food for these chicks. They would have all the vitamins and proteins necessary for the chicks' growth, but also would have their water intake, as they never really get a drink as such. And look at Mork bring in an absolute colossal piece of food. It seems to be a big abdomen of a moth. And just watch him struggle trying to feed the chicks. I had to speed it up, as rightly so, the chicks really struggle with getting that food. He eventually leaves, but then comes back a few minutes later and tries again with the same piece of food. But thankfully this time one of the biggest chicks takes the food and manages to swallow it whole. The smaller chicks certainly wouldn't have been able to handle that meal. And the super duo, Mork and Mindy, continue to bring in food all day, and the chicks seem lively as ever. Mork working tirelessly bringing food in and out, and Mindy is also doing the same, only stopping every so often to warm the chicks. And it won't be too long before these chicks are able to regulate their own heat, but we have a ways to go before that. And Mindy still knows how to look very cozy. But I would imagine it's going to get harder and harder for her to get comfy sitting on that lot. You can really tell when sometimes the chicks are hungry by the explosion when they come out and gape for food when they hop in. And if you listen very carefully, you can just about start hearing some chirping from the chicks. Them soft chirps and clicks are contact calls of the chicks. And as the 27th comes to a close, Mork brings in his last feed of the day and completely misses the boat with a fecal sac. And you can really see the difference between the chicks at the end of the video and at the start. They've got a lot darker now, and some of their feathers are starting to come through their skin. That's what's causing them to get a little darker like that. And with that, we will leave it there. As always, thank you so much for watching, it really means a lot to me. And I hope you are all enjoying the videos and continue to do so. So if you are, please give me a thumbs up and please subscribe if you haven't. And we'll see you in the next one. I will leave you watching Mindy here getting really comfy as she always does. Bye bye.